Welcome into a special edition. It is draft night here, and RotoWire is getting you ready for tonight's action. Jim Coventry, John McKechnie hanging out with you on draft night. Jags are on the clock here in just 2 hours. And folks, we got to get some extra action on this. So Jim and I are going to be breaking down our best bets for the first round and beyond here on RotoWire, here on this live stream. Let's get it rolling. Welcome back into the RotoWire NFL Draft Special. I'm your host, John McKechnie, joined by Mr. Jim Coventry. Jim, it's good to be back on screen with you. How are you doing?
Cannot wait for the draft. I get to work with Johnny McKechnie. It's a good day for me.
Likewise, man. The feeling is definitely mutual. And word on the street, Jim, and I know when we were working together, you said, you know, I'm an NFL guy. I'm all 32 teams. I don't watch as much college football, but word on the street is that you've been hitting the books as far as this draft class is concerned. You are prepped up. You are ready. What's that process been like this time around?
Well, I tell you what, a lot of film. I'm a film guy with the NFL, but I had to become an off-season film guy because I can't watch it during the regular college season, but I had to watch it in the off-season. So, yeah, I did come up with quite a bit of scouting tips, not nearly to the level of Johnny McKechnie, but you know what? I feel very good about this draft.
It's a lot of fun. I think, you know, we're big. We try to look at the fantasy lens of all of this, and this is a draft that I think is a little bit different than years past. I think it's been mulled over a couple of times that this might be the worst quarterback class since probably the EJ Manuel year in 2013. We'll get into how many quarterbacks we think are going to get selected this evening. And there isn't really like a true alpha like a Jamar Chase in this one. But there's a lot of receivers that I think are going to be worthy of first-round selections. And I think that there's also going to be some value on day two when it comes to receivers. So it seems like with the new trend, we're just going to continue to be spoiled by these receiver classes every single year.
Yes, it's the way the shape of the landscape of the college is going right now, preparing these receivers. And I say for the next 3 to 5 years, we are going to see the too high safety look to limit those explosive plays. And a lot of these receivers are coming out, are used to working in some of them in spread attacks, getting available in the middle of the field. And that's what the NFL has going as opportunity based right now. And so these players are going to slide in, and it is going to be a fun, immediate, hard hitting class.
Oh, it's going to be so good. And then on the other side, I do have to ask, you brought up the too high safety. Look, there aren't really a lot of safety prospects that are expected to go in the first round tonight. I think outside of Kyle Hamilton, that might just be it as far as tonight is concerned. And maybe a couple guys sneak in a little bit later, like a Lewis Cine or something like that. But I view them more as day two guys. But do you think that could be like a bit of a market efficiency on defenses where we're going to start to see like more guys geared towards safety, maybe the safety position get a little bit more valued as a result of all this?
That's a great question. But I think with the way the too high shell is going, I think they just need people to patrol the deep area of the field. I think it's more about being available to cover deep. I think they're expecting a lot out of the corners, but the safeties are just literally that. They're safeties. They're there just to stop the big play. So I don't know that they necessarily have to be impact guys. When you're sliding one, rotating one up into the box more, which you'll get out of the two high look to do that. That's where your Kyle Hamiltons come into play, where they can be a hybrid and serve both ways, because obviously defenses won't play cover two all day, every day, and obvious rundowns, we'll see less of that. But so I don't think the safeties are going to be attacked any differently than usual.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Good points there. Well said. Well taken. So let's go ahead. Let's start at the top. So there's been a lot of movement. I would say, once DraftKings and Fanduel and all these other sports books kind of released their initial draft prop bets, Aiden Hutchinson was just the presumptive number one. And then I think there was a little bit of discussion of maybe a couple of these offensive linemen, whether it's Ike Ekwonu, Evan Neal, guys like that, that were going to be challenging. Kayvon Thibodeau, his stock has slid a little bit. I don't think it falls too far, I think, at the end of the day. But Trayvon Walker, in your mind, has there been a guy who's come from someone who's like essentially off the board as being a first overall selection to being what is now trading at, I think like he's like almost minus 400 to be the first player overall. So, I mean, it's just like you have to lay so much juice in order for that to happen. So, do you remember anything like this where a guy comes out of nowhere to be that first overall pick? And what are your thoughts on Trayvon now that we know what we know about him?
So I don't remember things like this happening because usually we have a quarterback at the top or an elite like Myles Garrett type. And so it's kind of a slam dunk. And I still wonder how much smoke there is going on with the Trayvon Walker thing. He's the type of player the scouts love, though. He's toolsy. And the NFL scouts, some of them, especially like Trent Baalke, he may go for a guy like that. And I think that may be where the smoke is coming from. I think Jacksonville still wants to trade this pick. I read some earlier today that they're looking for a trade partner, haven't found one. I still think Aiden Hutchinson would be the pick. He's moved to plus 400, and those odds have gone up because the buzz has driven the Javon Walker odds to where you had them. I saw minus 450 on DraftKings this morning.
Yeah, so it's the odds seem to suggest that it would be a shock if it's not Trayvon Walker at this point, about right around 2 hours from now. So with that in mind, are you interested in putting a little bit down on Hutchinson just in case that this has been just a very, very well-coordinated smoke show from none other than the Jacksonville Jaguars?
Yes, at plus 400, yes. I'm not going to put obviously a big bet on it, but I do think there's a significant chance Hutchinson does get into that spot. If there's a trade, I think it's a slam dunk it happens. With Walker, it's interesting because, Johnny, what did you make of his college production versus his tape?
So he's someone that I follow Georgia extremely closely. I'm a graduate, so every Saturday I got them on in one form or fashion. And it never, to me, it always felt like, oh, man, like when he makes a play, you're like, oh, dang, like he's going to be something. But it never felt like even this past year in 2021 when Georgia had, one of the best defenses of the last decade or so, that he was the alpha. To me, it was Nakobe Dean, Lewis Cine in the back end, Darian Kendrick, who's, probably not going to get drafted until Saturday, and then Jordan Davis. So those were kind of the big front, like headliners of that group. But like you said, when you turn it into the scouting angle and how things project to the next level, there's nothing that Trayvon doesn't have. Like he's big, he's got explosive strength, athleticism. He's played in a system that I think churns out good NFL talent. Kirby Smart does a good job of coaching those guys up. So the production is not going to be there. But and if that's what you're looking at, if you're just going to kind of like box score scout as far as Trayvon Walker, and if you're trying to decide between him and Aiden Hutchinson, Hutchinson is going to come out on top. But what you want to know is how it all translates to the next level. And Hutchinson, he's 6'7", like 260, a little bit, so obviously a mountain of a man in general, but that's a bit of a thinner frame for a guy who's 6'7", whereas Trayvon, he kind of carries it a little bit more density. He's able to kind of hold his space a little bit better. So I think he's a little bit more scheme versatile than Hutchinson. And I think that there's a lot of work that he's going to have to do. He's raw as far as the pass rush moves are concerned. And if you're picking a guy 1 overall, you want him to get to the quarterback from that position. But I think that everything is there. It's just it's going to be on the Jaguars to get the most out of him.
Yes, I can't agree more with you. One quick question, though. Aiden Hutchinson seemed to win with the same move over and over, almost like a speed move, getting inside the tackle and winning there. Does he have a diversity of moves? Because I'm really wondering this myself. Or is he just able to win so easily he didn't have to go to a plan B?
So I think that he has decent enough bend around the edge. I wonder if the hand fighting that he was able to get away with at Michigan is something that he's going to be able to win with against NFL left tackles, because obviously that's who he's going to be lining up against a lot. Is he going to get pushed around? Is he going to get asked to bulk up? I don't think that Hutchinson's a bad player by any stretch. And if he ends up in Detroit, for example, the current scheme, I'm not sure if it's the cleanest fit, but I think that they'll find a way to make it work with him. But yeah, I think he will need to diversify it. But I think it's interesting that you bring up, his sort of lack of versatility in the pass rush sense, when that's the main thing that everyone just like wants to complain about when it comes to Trayvon Walker. They say he's so raw, but it's not like Hutchinson is an absolute finished product either.
Excellent. No, I love that. So where are you going next now? I'm excited to see where we're going with this thing.
So we have a couple of viewer questions. So our guy Scott wants to know how important are interviews in teams determining who they pick. I think this is something where it's one of the final pieces of the puzzle. I don't think that you start and end your case on a given player based on how they interview. This isn't like Goldman Sachs or something. You have to be able to put it down on the field or at the combine. But I think it's part of it. I think they can get a feel for how much a guy loves football. Is his head somewhere else? That type of thing. So it can serve as a bit of a tiebreaker, in my opinion. But I don't think it's like a be all end all that people like go into the draft process saying, okay, let's see how Evan Neal interviews, and that's going to determine everything.
Yeah, I think when there's a player an organization has questions about, and they're asking questions to figure those things out. If a player had off-field issues, they may want that player's interview is going to be important to them. If there are maturity issues, those questions would be important. Leadership skills. But most players, my guess is, the interview, as you said, Johnny, isn't going to be that much of a difference. Like you said, the tiebreaker. When you're looking for certain traits and you have to find out and try to dig a little deeper on those players, I think that's where it matters.
Yes, I well said. I think that pretty much sums it up as far as where the interviews fit into the overall draft process equation. So Crackshot cannot bet in New Mexico, unfortunately.
Oh.
However, we're talking about some receiver props. The line set right now, our guy Scott, who just asked the interview question, also mentioned that he took over 5.5 receivers in the first round. Is that a good bet? Jim, your thoughts?
I think it has a very good chance of cashing. There are so many receivers that could go deep into this draft. I wonder if some teams are going to go in saying, you know what? We need a different position in the first round. We can get a good one in the second. That may be the one thing that puts a blanket over the hot fire of the drafting of wide receivers. So I think based on talent, you would think 6 would go, but I see a scenario again where teams pass. What do you think, Johnny?
Yeah, I think that first of all, and what's going to really determine this is when does the receiver run start? Because I think once we see the first one go, I think we're going to start to see 2, 3, maybe even 4 guys up next in pretty rapid succession. So I'm thinking that some version of Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams, Drake London, and Chris Olave are the first 4 receivers off the board, and I would imagine that they're off within 10 picks of each other. I think that it's going to be a bit of a run. It's going to be a little bit bunched up. Treylon Burks, I would be surprised if he slips out of the first round. I know that there's some questions about how raw he might be. A huge guy that really played the bulk of his snaps at Arkansas out of the slot. So how does he transition to winning against NFL corners on the outside? Because that's obviously where they're going to want him to play. But I still think he ends up hearing his name tonight. So that takes us to 5, right?
Yes.
So there's the rub. So there's 5.5.
It's a perfect number.
So it really is. So from that, the other guys that I could possibly see going, Jahan Dotson, I think, is going to be key. And I think it's a big help for this particular bet that the Chiefs have not 1, but 2 picks, and they have just traded Tyreek Hill. So I think that I would be shocked if they walk out of the first round tonight without one.
Now, Johnny, I'm hearing buzz that the Chiefs are looking to trade up. Very, very high up. And I read that somewhere today. I can't remember exactly where, but if they are, they might be looking edge rusher. So we're going to see what happens there. But as it stands now, you're correct. With 2 picks, you would think they certainly want a hammer receiver. So that 5.5 number, Scott, is good. There's a very good chance it hits, but the number is perfectly set.
Yeah, it's tricky. I could, as per usual, you can see it going both ways with the way that Vegas sets these lines. It's pretty sharp. I don't really see a guy like Christian Watson sneaking into the first round necessarily. No. It seems like things have cooled on George Pickens a little bit. It seems like he's more destined to go in the second round. So really, Jahan Dotson is the key to this bet hitting on the over.
Yeah, totally agree with you.
And then let's see here. So, Scott, one more question from Scott here. Who, after the top three, who are you high on at the receiver position? I really do like George Pickens, and again, this isn't the Georgia colored glasses necessarily. That guy was a stud producer from the day he stepped on the field at Georgia. He's the most talented receiver that Georgia's had since AJ Green. Dominant freshman season, impressive sophomore season despite some shaky quarterback play.
Yes,
had the injury this past year in spring ball. Able to play just a handful of games late in the season, but did have big plays against Alabama both times.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think George Pickens, I agree. You said earlier he'll fall today too, but somebody is going to get a gem. And it wouldn't surprise me if he ended up being the best of this class. That wouldn't shock me at all.
No, I mean, recruiting wise, he was like rated as one of the best receivers in his class. So no, I'm totally with you there. I think, just the combination of maybe him being a little bit rough around the edges, plus the ACL injury, I think has maybe, forced, the issue of him maybe falling down just a little bit. But yeah, he has the makings of an alpha receiver. Let's see, other guys that you think might turn into something. I've always been Skye Moore.
He's been growing on me, Johnny. Yeah, as I watched the tape on him, I wasn't getting a lot of negatives. I don't like his tested agility at the 25th percentile. I wasn't hot on that. His explosiveness is middling, but his speed is good enough. I mean, he varies the moves, uses techniques to get open quickly. He can put multiple moves together. I think he's a natural against two high defenses that we're going to be seeing the next few years. I think he comes in and contributes quickly.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely with you there. He always liked his game out of Western Michigan. Western Michigan been turning out some guys, lately. D. Eskridge was a hot name around this time a year ago. Maybe he turns into something out there in Seattle. And then a more of like a deeper sleeper. This guy more like developmental, but I did always like Jalen Tolbert's game at South Alabama. So if he's like a late 2, early day 3 guy, someone to keep an eye on as someone who's probably not going to be among this first 10, 12 receivers taken, but definitely someone, if he lands in a good spot, I think we're taking a look there. We're going to have to, keep an eye for best ball and that sort of thing.
Tolbert's an excellent call, John.
Thank you. Yeah. There's something about him. I just really like him. I mean, like his first game, like 2 seasons ago at South Alabama, was playing the first night of the season before the rest of the teams had started up the following Saturday. And I was just like, all right, just give Jalen Tolbert the Biletnikoff right off the bat, just from like one catch. But like after that, paid close attention. I think he's going to be a good player, and always liked Romeo Doubs. I didn't think that he did as well as I was hoping at the combine, but I think there could still be something there. But those are a couple of like day 3 type of options there. Let's see here. Let's get into the top end of this receiver board. Garrett Wilson, I think a lot of people think that he could be the first receiver off the board. His over-under set at 9.5. Where's he going?
Yeah, I do think that he goes under that. I think that he will be viewed by many of the GMs as the top receiver in the class, and there's going to be one that goes that soon. I know we don't think about maybe 5 or 6 will go in the first round, but somebody's going to break the seal early. Too many of these teams need receiver help, and I know it goes deep, but somebody's going to want a high-end guy in there, and I do think he falls in the top 10. What say you, Johnny?
So I actually had him mocked at the over. So this morning I ended up putting him, I think, at 13.
Okay,
but not to the Texans. So this is a scenario that is yet to unfold. I projected a trade for the Texans upward to 8. Falcons trading back. I think the Falcons do need to find a way to trade back. Panthers really, really need to find a way to trade back. We'll see if they can find a dance partner for that one. But yeah, I think there's a slight there's definitely a scenario where Garrett Wilson goes 8. I think that's about as high as I could see him going. 9 would make sense too, especially if Seattle moves off of that spot. So that's a tricky bet. Crackshot also mentions that he could see Kansas City go trading up for a wide receiver. So maybe, with those 2 first round picks, they could certainly go ahead and if they start to see that receiver run forming, they trade up, maybe to like 17, maybe with the Chargers, although that's a division rival. So that could be a little bit tricky. But, you have teams like the Saints and the Eagles that have 2 picks in that same neighborhood. There. So how interested are they going to be in moving,
Yeah, you're right. I could totally see that happening. I said edge rusher earlier because they're going to need some defense, but Tyreek Hill's gone. Kelsey will be 33 years old early in the season. And Mecole Hardman was pretty much mostly benched for Pringle. He still played, but he lost that starting job, and now they're counting on him back. So, yeah, they're going to need some dynamic help here.
They really do. And yeah, I've been, kind of thinking that Kelsey, it has to slow down at some point. It really hasn't yet. He's still just an absolute beast, but the cliff comes for everyone at some point. And, he's just a couple months younger than Rob Gronkowski, I think. And, he's been seeing like 140 targets a year for several years in a row. That's a good amount of hits that you're taking at that stage.
And John, I'll tell you, the playoffs, he was great, but in the regular season, he had a lot of down games last year. He wasn't the same guy. His overall numbers dropped significantly. The playoffs masked that very well, but you play on adrenaline in the playoffs a little bit, but I don't know that the grind is going to be kind to him this year.
Yeah, I think that maybe like that first Bills game in the regular season, one that had the big long rain delay. I feel like he was kind of lost in that one, and the Bills just kind of like took it to the Chiefs when they were kind of still having trouble figuring things out. So yeah, I definitely noticed that when it came to Kelsey's game to game performance during the regular season last year. Let's shift it over to quarterback for a second here. So we got Malik Willis. I believe he's going to be the first quarterback taken. Not sure where you are on that. We'll get to that in a second here. But as it stands, his over-under is at 13.5. And I believe it was 13 where E.J. Manuel went.
15. I think 15? E.J. went at 15, I think.
Okay. So we can get our crack research team on that there in a second. But what say you when it comes to Willis looking at 13.5, over or under?
So I'm saying under. Teams are desperate for quarterbacks. Somebody's either going to trade up, somebody who needs a quarterback is going to take one. And I get it. He's not a first-round type talent guy, but he has upside. And teams are desperate, and we've seen it. I know the E.J. Manuel thing is what it was, but now we've seen teams have to reach for quarterbacks because you can't win without one. And if there's an upside guy, he's got to go in the top 13 picks.
I think so, too. It's basically the way that I view this pick is, do you think that the first quarterback is going to go at the 14th pick or later? And I don't, because I can identify the Lions as a possibility. I could see the Panthers. Can't really see the Falcons, but maybe you can't rule it out. I thought Seattle would be, a decent possibility, a decent landing spot. So that's a handful of teams just in the first 10 picks alone. And that's, not even mentioning a team like the Saints that has those 2 picks that could go ahead and package it to move up.
And it's plus 115 odds as of about 3 hours ago. So the odds are very nice on that. Malik Willis.
So I think I made a note of that in my draft props article as well. So we are definitely on the same page. I think Willis goes before the 14th pick. I'm with you there. We got another listener question, and Scott chimes in. Manuel went with the 16th pick. But Scott wants to know, can we see Desmond Ridder as the second quarterback off the board?
What do you think, Johnny?
I'm going to say no. I think that it is Kenny Pickett as the second quarterback off the board. Ridder, he's fine. There's some elements to his game that I think translate, but I don't think he's particularly accurate. I thought that there were some warts that he showed, not just against Alabama this past season, but there were other games where Cincinnati should have been steamrolling the opponent, and they kind of sleptwalked a little bit. And you can't put all of that on Ridder, and you can't put the Alabama game all on Ridder because it's, you got, next year's number 1 overall pick, possibly Will Anderson just blowing up the offensive line, that type of thing. So you can't put it all on him, but I just think that the ceiling is relatively low for him. I think it's relatively low for Kenny Pickett as well, but I think that at the end of the day, we see Pickett as a second quarterback.
Johnny, the problem I see with Ritter is he doesn't have an NFL arm. He does not. He's off on throws, short on throws, and they say he runs fine, but he's not Malik Willis running type. So he's a decent runner. So I actually like to prop him going after pick 30.5 because I think the NFL is going to see that. This guy doesn't have the arm. He can run, like we said, but he's not a dynamic running threat.
And he's pretty skinny too. So I think that there's just enough working against him to where, I think that I would be surprised to hear him go in the first round, let alone ahead of Kenny Pickett, despite the well-documented hand issues for old Kenny there. So yes, good mention there on Ritter and the over 30.5. Let's switch it to the other side of the ball here. The biggest man in this class, Jordan Davis himself, 13.5 is his over under. Where are you with this one?
John, I think he has to go under that. If somebody is going to, they see he is an athletic marvel for what he does. I know he's an interior lineman, but he is a game changer. And there are never enough of those guys in a draft. And I have to think somebody actually would trade up a few picks to get him. Johnny, where do the Ravens pick?
They pick at 14, so I think
that's why the number's there.
Yep, that's the absolute floor for him. I don't think that he gets past Baltimore at 14, and again, that's why the number is there. I think that there's been some linkage between those two, so I think he does go just at 14. So I'm going to go with the over. But I think he has a totally legit case to go for the under. Like you said, there just simply aren't that many human beings walking the earth that move the way that he does. I mean, it's crazy to be that big. And, like you would always hear, and some of this would be like Georgia message board fodder, but, talk of his GPS numbers at practice getting up to like 19, 20 miles an hour. It's like, sir, like that should be illegal. You shouldn't be that big and moving that fast. It's too much.
John, I know they're different players, but could you make any type of comparison between him and Aaron Donald in terms of impact? Like, would they have similar impact?
The thing about Davis that concerns me, and Greg Cosell actually brought up an interesting point on Davis, where he's strong, but he doesn't translate it into power enough. So like he holds his space extremely well, and he'll grapple on to an interior offensive lineman, and that guy is not moving. Like he can help plug the hole that way, but he doesn't necessarily blow up the middle of the line quite like you would like to see. And some of the concerns, and this comes from the Alabama SEC championship game, he got gassed like really, really early in that game. Right. He got asked to play more snaps than Georgia had been asking him to play, and he just completely got sapped. His energy was lost. So you do have to wonder if teams are concerned that he holds up for enough snaps to be worth a pick this high.
Yeah, I think I love that analysis. I was wanting to hear your opinion on that because I think you're right. Aaron Donald was drafted around that spot, but he ended up being way better than anybody would have ever thought. He's like a small room Hall of Fame guy, whereas we know Jordan is going to be very good and all pro probably, but not all world.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. Yeah, but Aaron Donald is just like it's like you watch him and it's just like you're watching something that just simply doesn't exist anywhere else in the NFL. Like the way that he impacts the game from the middle is just not. I mean, they won the Super Bowl because of it. Like that, he just blew up that entire last Bengals drive is just absolutely absurd. So, we got some good defensive linemen coming in this class, of course. Let's get to a handful of other over-unders that you're targeting in this draft that we might hear either tonight or tomorrow.
So a few, and then we'll go quickly on these. I think George Pickens, because of the buzz around him, goes over 36.5, early second round pick, but he only needs to go 5 picks into the second round. I think we all feel confident he's not going into first. We love him, but we seem like he's going into second, and I think he would last enough picks to go over that. It's minus 145, so it's juiced up a bit. I also think Matt Corral, under 33.5. I think somebody trades into the first round to get that 5th-year option. Some team, that could be the guy they target. If they do, they'll want to trade up for that extra year.
No, that is a good point. That's something that people need to keep, in the back of their mind when it comes to the number of quarterbacks that go in the first round, because of that, how valuable that fifth year option can be. Unless you're the Giants and Daniel Jones or whatever. But yeah, I mean, certainly worked for the Ravens and Lamar Jackson when they pulled that off in 2018. So I mean, the theory is absolutely there. What kind of steers you towards Corral in that particular instance as someone that a team would go in for?
I think there's a level of athleticism that's involved with him, and I think the arm is good enough. I think that he is going to project into, again, these offenses now, there's going to be a lot of attacking in the middle of the field. I think Corral can do that. I think a team's going to see from an organizational standpoint, he is going to be able to attack those specific defenses. So I think he's not a project, but he's a player I think that could be functional for a team that needs to accent a good roster right now.
He kind of reminds me of like a souped up Taylor Heineke, just no real regard for his own health and safety. Like that, he went out there in the Sugar Bowl, hurt his ankle, unfortunately, but that speaks to him just wanting to go out there and compete, with his guys one last time before he heads off to the NFL. That of course is just anecdotal, but I mean, he had good games against Alabama during his time at Ole Miss. He's athletic, like you said. He ran for a ton of touchdowns at Ole Miss, threw for a ton as well. Who do you think was throwing Elijah Moore the ball back in 2020? It was Matt Corral. So I mean, he has. I do like where I probably do like him more than Ritter now that we're kind of talking it out a little bit more. So I can definitely see that. Maybe another team is on the same page as you and agrees that he's someone worth taking that flyer on, getting that fifth year option. So again, let's take it back into more fantasy. We haven't brought up this position at all. And I know that in recent years, we've only seen one, maybe two in a given year go in the first round. But running back, this class I think you have a pretty established first two, and then it's anyone's guess as to the order after that. But I think that Breece Hall is going to be that first running back off the board. But where does it happen?
So I love the over and under. We assume probably not first round, although there's been a little loose talk. The Bills could, if they're going to, they could do that. But he's 37.5 for the over and under. And that's a full 5 picks into the second round. So I could see somebody using a very early second round pick on him. So I do like under 37.5 at minus 115 odds on Breece Hall.
Yeah, be a la, Jonathan Taylor a couple of years ago, where the best running back in the class ends up going very, very early in that second round. So that's kind of where I see it as well. And, depending on where he ends up, he probably should still be, even if he's like the 7th or 8th fantasy relevant player taken, he probably should end up being the number one for rookie drafts, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you on that. Now, I want to hear what you think. Kenneth Walker has a 43.5 over and under, minus 115 odds. I think both ways on that. Where do you like to go on Kenneth Walker?
I think I would go over on him. I think that we're going to see him slide a little bit. I don't think that there's another running back that gets taken before him after Breece Hall. But I think that, we're going to see the market cool down right after Breece Hall. Breece Hall just kind of standing there as a tier of his own. Yes. And Walker, there just are legitimate questions about the pass catching ability. Like, does he have it? Does he not? He kind of has an incomplete sample from his time at Wake Forest and at Michigan State. And, you can only fault him so much for not catching a ton of passes in the Michigan State offense. They weren't throwing the ball to running backs a ton, but still a question mark. And if you're going to be the second running back off the board, you have to have a complete game. You can't just be a north-south guy.
And let me ask you about one more. Isaiah Spiller, 71.5 is the over and under on him. What do you think about where he falls in this draft?
So that puts him, early third.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been a Spiller guy. Really.
Nor am I.
So I could see a couple of other running backs potentially going ahead of Isaiah Spiller. I think that I don't know how much I'm buying the James Cook late helium or not. But I think that, someone like a Pierre Strong has a good case to be the third running back off the board, that type of thing. Spiller just screams replacement level to me. And I don't think that you need to spend a third round pick on a replacement level guy. So I would take the more on Spiller. I could see a kind of I'm rooting for the guy, of course, but I could see a slide, maybe even into Saturday.
And I agree with you. And I think from a fantasy perspective, I see bust written all over him. I just get this sneaking suspicion that a couple NFL teams are going to be enamored with him. I like Pierre Strong like you do, well better. I think somebody is going to be enamored with Spiller. And so that's more of a gut call, but I'm going under only for that reason. I agree with you. There are better running backs on the board. If it were me, I think I'd Spiller like at running back 6 or 7 on my personal board. But like I said, that's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you bring up the good case. He's a big school talent, who was productive during his time at A&M. It's not like he didn't do anything and they're just making this up or something. But I don't really see the upside there. And I think, this is another anecdotal thing, but when I watch Texas A&M, I'm yelling at the TV asking why Spiller's on the field when Devin Achane, the guy who's younger than him in that A&M backfield, is clearly the best running back on the team, but Spiller's getting the more of the carries and snaps instead of Achane. But every time Achane touches the ball, it's going for 7-8 yards. It never made sense to me in the first place for Spiller. Maybe I'm grading him on too harsh of a curve because I like Achane so much for next year, but I'm not really seeing it.
Johnny, and his testing was horrible. His 40 time was 20th percentile. Size adjusted was only 27th percentile. His explosiveness testing, 7th percentile. And he has ball security concerns. So like I said, I don't like him. So I'm glad you brought up what you brought up about him.
Yeah. So we are, if you're looking for Spiller hype, go to another live stream is basically where we land there. Another question here. Could James Cook be the best pass catching back in this class? So it's interesting because I have some concerns about Cook falling into that either or type of positional thing, very similar to what we saw with Demetric Felton a year ago.
Oh, wow. Wow. I like that comment. I didn't think about it that way. Like that comment.
Because Georgia, he barely got carries his first 3 seasons at Georgia, even to the point where younger guys were getting carries over him. He checked in pretty light at the combine. So I just don't think that he's someone that you pencil in for more than 10 carries in a given game as a change of pace guy. His pass catching is extremely natural though. And Georgia loved to split him out wide. Yes. He had a huge catch against Tennessee this past year where they moved him out. I think not even into the slot, but totally out wide. And Stetson Bennett hit him for a long gainer. So he can do that. He has that natural pass catching ability, but I think he's going to need to develop some of the other skills that running backs need to be able to bring to the table. So you're not just tipping off the other team okay, they're going to throw him the ball.
Johnny, and the question was that could he be the best pass catching back in the class? And I think you're indicating as a pass catcher, he can be. And I'm with you. I don't think he's going to be much of a receiver. I'm not making a direct player comp here, but do you see an Austin Eckler type career? He's not as good of a runner as Eckler, but the receiving chops, how he just shreds it in the receiving game. Cook can beat linebackers easily. You can line him up outside. He can even get vertical and track the ball. So you wonder how a good coach could utilize him in an offense as a receiver and only giving him 4 to 6 carries in the game, but using him heavily as a receiver. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So I guess my thinking is, and Eckler's about the same weight, and Eckler is a little bit more rocked up looking than yes. Cook is. Cook is a little bit leaner looking than Eckler, but I think that's an interesting comp and where Eckler's rushing ability just sort of started to develop over time, but he always had that pass catching ability. So I think that's a good point. Maybe this is a cop out, but maybe the best pass catching back in this class is just the best back in this class. Maybe it is just Breece Hall, and we don't even have to think all that hard about it.
I love that. And you know what? Simplify it, right?
There it is. So, yeah, Breece Hall can catch everything that's thrown at him. He's a totally complete back. Really love his game. I think he's going to totally hit the ground running at the next level. Let's get to let's go down into the trenches for a second before we finish up. So hit me with some Evan Neal bets that you like, or some offensive line bets that you like.
Now, I took these bets earlier, so the odds probably change, and they probably are a favorable change for people who are betting. A couple weeks ago, Evan Neal as the first offensive lineman taken, I got him at plus 150 odds. The odds they may be better at this point because there's a lot of buzz of other linemen, a couple other linemen going before him. But I still think at the end of the day, Evan Neal has the highest floor of the tackles. And I think even if the Jaguars get down to it, I think at some point, if they probably don't go, we already kind of know where they're going, but if they decide to change course, or any team in the top, I think they're going to have to say, you know what, we've got to take the player with the high floor and a great ceiling as well. To me, he needs to be the first lineman off the board. And I got him at plus 150. I like that. I also liked it. I got a bet at minus 125 where he's a top 5 pick. So that kind of hedged it. So if he's not the first, he's, in my mind, going in the top 5.
Because you get that sweet spot, right, where you get picks 3, 4, and 5 all could be in the market for a tackle.
Yes.
So that's absolutely huge. So I think that's a really smart way of getting action on Evan Neal and where he might go in this draft. Derek Stingley, thoughts on where he might end up? Where is the bet that you're targeting with Sting?
So DraftKings just has a bet simply that he's taken in the top 10. To me, and there are people quibbling over who top corner is. I think Stingley lost some momentum, and I think he's gained it back. I think many teams will see him as the number 1 corner. And look, it's a passing league, and you've got tackles on the offensive side, you've got edge rushers, and you got cornerbacks. Those are the 3 premium positions, of course, wide receivers, but really a high corner is probably as valuable as a receiver. He's got to go in the top 10. Has to.
Yes. I think that, like, if we were doing this a week ago, I would have wondered about Stingley being in the top 10. But like you said, it seems like the favor is back on Stingley's side. And I think it's just a case of people were just overthinking all of it all along. Like, this is a guy who was locking down legit receivers as a true freshman at LSU on one of the best teams in college football history, starting right away and being a key contributor on that defense. It's just like, what else do we really need to think about there? Like the last 2 years of college for him, like, obviously they weren't ideal, but I just don't really hold that against him. You know, if this was college basketball where he could come out after his freshman year, he would have gotten drafted in the first round.
Yes, 100% perfect call. Nothing to add.
There we go. Any other thoughts, predictions, maybe something crazy you could see happening tonight as it pertains to the first round before we head out?
In terms of craziness, I can't. But you know what? You have some really good props that you put on the RotoWire site. Before we get out, I'd like you to go over a couple of those. Can I throw a couple questions at you for those that you came
Please.
up with? So there was some a plus 300 on DraftKings for the offensive lineman going to the New York Jets.
Yes. So I like that one because that one has more favorable odds than the defensive lineman, where that one was like plus 125, something like that. And I had heard pretty strong thoughts that the Jets were really enamored with Ickey from NC State. So I think that Ickey is there at 4. And if he is, I think the Jets have a hard time going away from him. So Sauce Gardner, obviously in play there, could blow up this bet. But I think as it stands, as it pertains to the value, I think that's worth taking a look.
Like that. Now, we talked earlier about the 14th pick in the draft that the Baltimore Ravens have, and we talked about one Jordan Davis who has that prop with 13.5, but the Ravens taking a defensive lineman at plus 190 on FanDuel. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think that one, you got to lock that one in, because I think if it's not Jordan Davis, it wouldn't shock me if they go Devontae Wyatt. It wouldn't completely shock me. And again, you got to make sure that the positions line up right, because George Karlaftis is listed as an edge, but I could see the Ravens being interested in a guy like him, a really heavy-handed player out of Purdue. So I like the idea of the Ravens going after defensive line, because that is one of the stronger parts of this draft, and especially in that part of the first round. So I think the Ravens go D lineman to start things out at 14.
And then, Johnny, you had some really good over and under calls that we didn't talk about. John Mechie at -115 on DraftKings, an over of 50. You like him over 56.5. Talk about it.
Yes. So it honestly surprised me, like shocked me to see him that high. He's nothing like any of these other Alabama receivers that we've seen in recent years. Like, he's not toolsy really, like, at all. And he wasn't all that productive. Like, he was reliable. He was good on a per target basis. He can block. Like, there are things that you can like about Mechie's game, but I think it really hurts him that he suffered that torn ACL in the SEC championship game, did not get to test. Whereas, Jalen Waddle, he doesn't test at all last year after that ankle injury. But you knew from like 2 plays on film how fast he was. And the same thing is going to apply for Jameson Williams. I think teams needed the verified measurables for Mechie. I think that's going to send him down the board. And I put it at the end of my blurb on him. I see him, or I'd be more confident in betting on him going in the 4th round than the 2nd.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, I like that. Now, same team, Alabama. Jameson Williams has an 11.5 number, and I think you like the under on that, and it's -130 at DraftKings Sportsbook. What are your thoughts on Jameson Williams?
I think the fact that the Jets are probably not going to be able to get it done as far as getting that Deebo Samuel trade means that 10th pick is going to a receiver spot. And given their interest in Tyreek Hill, that speed element, yes. I think Jameson Williams is the #1 speed receiver in this class. And I think that the Jets have to be enamored with him. I think that if he's there at 10 and that trade, of course, does not go down, I think Jameson Williams is a Jet tonight.
Oh, and that's a great high level connection. The interest in Hill, looking for somebody with that blazing speed. So yeah, it makes perfect sense that they would go that route. And they do have other receivers. They need that speed element. So that would work out really well. Now, Andrew Booth is +145 to go under pick 29.5. What are you love the under? What are the thoughts on it?
So I've cooled off on this slightly, but I can still see it happening. I know he's been linked to the Bills for a lot during the draft process. The Bills could certainly use additional corner. My concern now is that the helium on Kaiir Elam has gotten so loud to where I think he might have leaped not just Andrew Booth, but Trent McDuffie out of Washington as well, and be the 3rd corner off the board. So keep an eye on Elam tonight. It seems like a lot of the industry people believe that he could be that next guy up after Stingley and Sauce.
And you have that as a miscellaneous bet. Your NFL draft as the 3rd corner selected. Elam, like I said, +300. So good call. Last one I want to hit you up for here is, so linebacker Devin Lloyd. He is at 19.5 as a number. You could get it at -148 to go over, and that's where you like that. Explain that one too.
Yep. So again, you're giving up a little bit of juice there, but I think that, he's obviously a very good player coming out of Utah. But as you walk through the team needs, once you get to that number, that 19.5 number, I think that there are other inside linebackers that are going to jump him on the board. I could see a slide happening. I could see multiple teams in the 20s just simply not being interested in going at inside linebacker, especially, when you have teams like the Chiefs and the Packers who are in the market for receiver, or the Titans who are probably going to be interested in offensive linemen, that type of thing. Cardinals probably not going in that direction. So I just think that the board does not set up super well for Devin Lloyd. So I think that he slides a little bit tonight. I think he creeps into the end of the 1st round, but I'm not thinking that he goes in the top 20. I think even Quay Walker out of Georgia could go ahead of him tonight.
John, when you mentioned that, so running backs have been devalued. We see the occasional one go in the 1st round, and it's often a mistake. Saquon going as high as he went, whatever, but that was a mistake. And inside linebackers are pretty much the same in today's NFL. They're not the big assets in the pass game, which is the game's about. And so occasionally some teams will take one where they shouldn't, but typically they need to fall. It's a devalued position.
No, it absolutely is. You don't really see, those classic 4-3 middle linebacker guys, your Ray Lewis's of the world. Like the game doesn't function the same way anymore. So yeah, those inside linebackers, those middle linebackers, just fall down just a little bit. They are the running backs of the defense in that sense. But Jim, we got to roll here. I've got an hour to finish my prep here as we get set for the first round of the NFL draft. Everyone, where can we find you on Twitter, Jim, so everyone can keep up with you on there?
Yes, you can find me at Jim Coventry NFL. And thanks for tuning in, guys and gals.
Right on. And you can find me over at John's Tailgate and follow RotoWire all weekend long. We got live draft updates for all 256 picks, I want to say, but somewhere in that neighborhood. Might be a little bit more with the comp picks, but we got picks for everyone. We got fantasy reaction articles coming each day of the draft. So much good stuff. Jim and I are going to be back tomorrow afternoon breaking down the fantasy fallout from round one. That's going to do it for us here. For Jim Coventry, I'm John McKechnie. Thanks for watching the RotoWire NFL Draft Special.
Try RotoWire today, free for 10 days. Get our premium tools, rankings, analysis, and breaking news alerts. No credit card required. Go to rotowire.com/try.